Your pen. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Austin work session for Tuesday, November 20th, 2018. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm just going to start with a few announcements. Please be reminded that this week is a short one. Town and Village offices will be closed on Thursday, November 22nd and Friday, November 23rd in celebration of Thanksgiving. If you or someone you know has nowhere to celebrate the holiday, you are invited to a traditional Thanksgiving dinner party at the Austin Presbyterian Church at 34 South Highland Avenue across from the high school. And that starts at noon on Thanksgiving. This is an annual event put on by Scarborough Presbyterian Church, the Briarcliff Congregational Church, and the Austin Presbyterian Church. And there is no charge for the meal. All are invited. Whether you are in need of nourishment or companionship or both, please come and celebrate with your friends and neighbors on Thursday. If you want to help or if you know someone who is homebound and needs a meal delivered, please call the Austin Presbyterian Church at 941-0540 and leave a message, and they will make sure to follow up. The second year of the Austin Bucks program rolled out this week, and it's a great way to get some of your shopping done while patronizing our local merchants, and this is courtesy of the Village of Austin. Stop by the Austin Library, the Austin Recreation Center, or the manager's office at 16 Croton Avenue, and we also have some up on the third floor to pick some up for your family. Each buck can be used at one of our many Austin businesses for $5 off of your purchase. For a list of participating businesses, visit austinchamber.org and look under the Shop Local tab. Although many of us have gotten used to the Friday after Thanksgiving as being Black Friday, don't forget that the Saturday afterwards is Small Business Saturday. Shop local at the Northeast Etsy Artist Collective on Friday, November 23rd between 11 and 5 p.m. and Saturday, November 24th between 10 and 4 p.m. right at our very own Austin Public Library. While you pick up your locally crafted gifts for the holidays, 15% of the proceeds will go to benefit the Friends of the Austin Public Library, who help the library to put on special programming not covered by our tax dollars. There are so many benefits to shopping local. There are several other ways to get your holiday shopping done right in town next weekend. For Small Business Saturday, check out Melita's Bazaar on Main Street on Saturday, 11/24 between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. and the Chambers Uptown Alliance Holiday Market between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. at Mike Risco Music and the Elks Lodge at 118 Croton Avenue. If you are not around this weekend or still have goodie bags to fill, another local gift favorite is Campwood's Holiday Craft Fair on Saturday, December 1st between 10 and 5 p.m. and Sunday, December 2nd from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. On Monday, November 26th, participate in Meet the Entrepreneur Next Door with Austin Innovates from 7 to 9 p.m. at Good Choice Kitchen. Meet Soli Pierce from Sherwood Forest Design and David Schofield from SBS Printing and Shipping, and learn more about our local entrepreneurs and their success stories. On Thursday, November 29th, join Assemblywoman Sandy Gala for a town meeting at Croton Free Library, where a panel will address the pros and cons of recreational marijuana use in New York State. Come learn more and share your opinion with our Assemblywoman and her staff. She did just announce to some of us recently that she does believe this is going to be taken up in the next legislative session, so please make sure to weigh in with your opinion. On Friday, November 30th, the Austin tree lighting ceremony will be held at Market Square at 6 p.m. Join for music, cookies, and hot cocoa, and a hello from Santa and Mrs. Claus. Thanks to the Austin Department of Parks and Recreation, along with the Austin Chamber of Commerce, for organizing this beloved and free annual event for our community. The Chabad of Briarcliff will host the lighting of the menorah on Tuesday, December 4th, also at Market Square, and I believe that starts at 6 p.m. All are welcome for donuts, warm beverages, latkes, crafts, and chocolate gelt. Judah Maccabee is going to be there too. Woohoo! This free event begins at 6 p.m. as already mentioned. Finally, the Ossining Police Department has partnered with the Ossining schools to host a coat drive for families in need this winter. Through November 26th, drop your new or gently used coats off at the police station at 8688 Spring Street or at 16 Croton Avenue on the first floor and pay it forward this holiday season. And the reason that the coat drive is going to stop on November 26th is because we will start collecting toys for some of our local youth who are in need, and there will be a box out starting the following week for following November 26th at least, for the toys program that is hosted by the Austin Boat and Canoe Club, and there might be other boxes also here for other programs like it. Okay, so that is it. Do any of my colleagues have any other announcements coming up for this holiday weekend? No. Okay.
Just that the toy drive is starting, so keep your eye out for the boxes all over town.
Okay. Fantastic. So first up on our agenda tonight is our very own Chief Nick Franzoso of Austin Volunteer Ambulance Corps. He has joined us tonight to discuss the renewal of the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District contract for 2019 through 2021. For more than 10 years, the MHAD has provided exceptional, reliable, and local care to our residents through a contract with OVAC, an emergency medical service based in Ossining that is run by fewer than a dozen employees and many, many volunteers. The creation of the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District is considered to be a best practice example of emergency medical service in New York State. And it also includes all of the village and unincorporated area of Ossining and a small segment of Newcastle. And I know that the chief is going to speak a little bit more about that. We're very proud to have them on our team. Chief Franzoso, please tell us a bit about OVAC, what you guys have been up to, and discuss the renewal of the MHAD agreement with OVAC, which is scheduled to expire at the end of 2018.
Sure. Well, first, thank you to Madam Supervisor and Town Council for having me here tonight. Talk about OVAC a little bit and Westchester County EMS services as a whole. So many of you might or might not know EMS kind of serves two purposes: public safety and emergency management and preparedness, and bridges the gap between the streets and people's homes and the healthcare system. Westchester County's EMS system is comprised of a lot of volunteer, career, and combination services all throughout all the municipalities here in Westchester. A lot of the agencies are individually responsible for providing these services to the community. What that kind of means is that EMS is not a mandated service through New York State, but it's up to every municipality to put the services forward and protect the residents as they see fit. Commercial services typically provide minimal services at a higher cost just to meet contractual obligations, while volunteer and combination systems constantly work to reinvest in their members and their equipment, which is what OVAC is as a combination system. We are fortunate to live in a community where our elected officials recognize this importance to the vital service to its constituents. Many volunteer agencies struggle to cover their first call. So what that means is anyone who calls for an ambulance, sometimes agencies can't provide appropriate services for that first time. Here in Ossining, we run 2 ambulances pretty much 24/7. So through the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District that we're a partner with to provide these services, the contract provides staffing for 1 ambulance, and it's just for staffing. So what OVAC does through its billing, supplemental billing, through insurance, fundraising efforts, is we provide a second ambulance to the community because we know that our call volume warrants that. We also provide ambulances. We have 4 ambulances total. So for every one that we provide out to the community, we have a spare or a backup, so that if one goes down, we're not decreasing services to the community. On very many occasions, we'll run 3rd or 4th ambulances just to cover our volume, and that's all before we request in mutual aid. So for other communities that don't staff as well as we do here in Ossining, sometimes that first due call is covered by mutual aid. So OVAC is a not-for-profit volunteer agency supplemented with career staffing. to provide the highest level of care to the community. Established 1958 with the closing of the Ossining Hospital, OVAC provided a mode of transport to Phelps Hospital in North Tarrytown. 1982, OVAC became one of the first agencies to provide advanced life support, so that's paramedics on ambulances. So that's pretty much a lot of the invasive measures that they could do in the hospital, providing medications, advanced cardiac care, can be brought to somebody's home and then provided through a transport to the ER. We also provide that second ambulance, which is a basic life support ambulance, which 7 days a week from 8 a.m. till midnight is staffed in our building. And then the overnight hours from midnight till 8 a.m. is volunteers from home that come out to answer that call. We do see that the overnight hours, our second calls decrease significantly to maybe one per week. So that's why we drop down to staff with people from home on the overnight hours. On the overnight hours, since that's a basic life support ambulance, they'll also be accompanied with a fly car medic, which is an ALS first response. So that's a paramedic in a fly car or an SUV that'll go out. OVAC is part of and operates the Tri-Community Fly Car System, which was established in 1995, primarily to provide paramedics to Briarcliff and Croton and Ossining as a backup. Since the first ambulance has a paramedic on it already, the second call would need a paramedic in the fly car. So the paramedic service in a fly car is like Briarcliff and Croton's first two ALS. They're basic life support ambulances. They have an EMT and a driver or two EMTs on their ambulances. Hopefully that makes sense. It does to me anyway. Does anyone have any questions on that one? I know sometimes that poses some if you don't know anything about it. With the increasing number of EMS calls, low insurance reimbursement rates in 2008, OVAC approached the town of Ossining for assistance. It was determined that in order to provide a stable service and to have measurable markers which will allow an agency to be held to the highest standards, that the formation of the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District was a logical step, and OVAC is proud to provide the services to the district. Quarterly, representatives from town and village of Ossining and part of Newcastle meet to discuss statistical data, which ensures that both residents and visitors to our area are provided the highest level of EMS service. In 2008, OVAC handled roughly 2,056 calls. That's just ambulance calls. In 2018, so far this year through October, we're at 2,300. At the end of 2017, we completed 2,965 calls, which was up 44% over the 9 years. We do anticipate this year to have a slightly lower call volume, which will probably end around 2,800, but it'll still be more than our volume in 2016. In addition to the services that we provide to Ossining, OVAC also provides assistance to surrounding volunteer agencies looking for career personnel to supplement their efforts. Here in Ossining, we use career personnel to supplement our volunteers. Anytime there's no volunteer available, we'll put a career person on the ambulance, and we're scheduled out so that we know somebody's going to answer that call. So now other communities are kind of jumping onto this effort and realizing that having staff in their buildings is the best way to get ambulances to residents quickly as possible. OVAC provides supplemental EMTs to Briarcliff, Pleasantville, Valhalla, and through the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District through to Croton and Sleepy Hollow. It's through these partnerships that costs and resources are shared, so we can continue to provide the highest level of service at the lowest cost to comparable commercial services. So OVAC's yearly operating budget is around $2.5 million. Out of that, 36% of it is patient insurance, so we bill insurance for every transport we do. 26% of that comes from the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District. 26% of that is for our EMT services to all those other agencies. 10% comes from the fly car system and 2% for donations. All of our donations are reinvested into capital improvement, whether it's the building or equipment. The board yearly makes recommendations to fix either the building or we added solar this past year. 2 years ago, we purchased a new ambulance to replace one that was in the shop more than it was on the road. So those donations go strictly right to those capital expenditures. On the expenses side, our highest percentage goes to payroll, which is 66%, goes straight to payroll. 8% for workers' comp and health insurance. All the numbers drop down drastically. We have 3% for vehicle maintenance and fuel, 3% for general liability insurance, stuff like that. Another 2% to equipment, 1% goes to training. So from there, it drops down to, well, less than 1%. But kind of get the idea that our biggest expense is payroll. Phelps Hospital at the end of in the middle of next year is going to be sponsoring an event to kind of honor the services that we do through OVAC and the Mid Hudson Ambulance District and the Tri Community Fly Car System to other communities so that they can see what our efforts are doing kind of in a collaborative process. So it's kind of everything I have written down here for today. I don't know if there's questions about contract specifically. Our contract with the district specifically requires one ambulance 24/7. So that's what we're contractually obligated to do. That's why we add the second ambulance. We also have supervisory staff that is paid for through OVAC. I'm one of them. I'm full-time career with the ambulance corps. I was a volunteer there for 16 years before appointed this position. So I live here in the town. So I'm pretty happy about that.
I'll open it up for any questions or discussion. And I thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation and explanation. And obviously, if anybody has any questions, Councilwoman Feldman attends our quarterly meetings as a representative also from the town. And we're very appreciative of all the people who are able to make it to the meetings and to hear about the statistics. And I think that since you started collecting data and since Nick became the chief, he's done a really great job at looking at response times and trying to find reasons and how to cut back on those. As we look at the contract, also Nick's been cognizant that we're all restricted to the 2% tax cap, and the additions to have reflected that for the year-over-year increases. So we're appreciative of that as well, and we know that we need to make up the difference elsewhere, and I think that you do a really great job providing these services to town and village, and we hope that others see the benefit and that we can expand services because you're doing such a great job, and we want other people to have that benefit as well, other communities. And now for questions from anybody.
I just want to say, well, how are you attracting more volunteers?
So,
I know you do a pretty good job as compared to many other departments.
So volunteers
secret.
are obviously tough to come by for any department or any agency or any group. We're very fortunate to work with Ossining High School on a regular basis. They've started a healthcare leadership program about 2 years ago through this for the seniors, where we go in and teach them all about OVAC. We show them what our ambulances are like, how our agency is. I give a one-day class about how I became in EMS and what they could look forward to one day. Through that, we also teach them first aid and CPR. After that, we get a lot of interns from that class. I think out of that class, we get 6 members who not only ride along, but also join the agency, which is phenomenal every single year since for the last couple of years. I think the Ossining High School does a great job with promoting us as an agency and getting people who are really interested in healthcare to come ride along and see what it's like on the road, see what it's like in the streets. We also do a lot of classes like ride along sponsorships through EMT courses. So through Phelps Hospital, if anyone's looking to take an EMT class, they'll do ride alongs with our agency. Typically, we'll get 1 or 2 members a year just from attending an EMT class at Phelps or Westchester Community College when they offer it. We have a partnership with them to have them come do ride alongs so they could experience what a quasi busy agency is. A lot of the volunteer agencies in our area do roughly 800 to 900 calls a year. So we're fairly busy with just about 3,000. So it's kind of a nice, the nice side of things that if people want to get into it, they could come and actually do calls instead of just sit around all day. They get some real on the road experience, real world stuff. So
I'd like to thank you for being so forward thinking and finding all the different ways to introduce, volunteer ambulance services as something people might want to do to help their community And I just want to thank you for all that you do and for taking my son as a volunteer ambulance person, and helping him learn. But yeah, thank you for all you do for the community. I really appreciate it, the energy and the organization you brought when you became chief.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I think you guys do a great job. Excuse me. I just know that, this around the clock thing is not easy. Because I remember when you were having problems a while back. And so, but finally you got to where you could keep going, which is good. And believe me, I was not going to volunteer. That is quite a job. It's sort of like the fire department. You just sitting there waiting to be called, or you got to come here and sit and wait. But it's as long as things are working out, which it seems to be. I think you guys are doing a great job. Just hang in there and do the best you can.
Thank you.
I don't have anything else to add other than thank you very much. And the service is wonderful service and greatly appreciated.
Well, for me, I'm still new, so the presentation was helpful for me. So thank you for coming.
Absolutely. And I invite anyone who wants to come by for a tour of the building or just kind of experience what a day is like, on the ambulance, a couple hours just to kind of see what we do and, take a ride around to all the other communities. What's that?
So I never got that invitation.
Sure, we did in the beginning.
I did? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
took all those
Right.
rides to Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, well, yeah, but I mean, I think,
Pleasantville.
well, also you have a great relationship with Phelps, and they have some really wonderful new facilities there that are, I think you guys have been using for training.
Yep, Phelps does a huge sponsorship for. They have a huge training department in the Hoke Center. That's where a lot of our EMTs go for both new training and continual education. It is a great partnership. Phelps is one of the few hospitals in the area that really do a good reach to local EMS agencies. It's important. They understand that we're their gateway to the ER, and they support us in any way that they can through medical direction and through just continuing education. So
Also, just want to quickly give a little shout out to one of our audience members who's here today, Honorable Richard Wishney, is a past county legislator as well as town supervisor. He was instrumental in setting up the Mid Hudson Ambulance District and working closely with OVAC to make sure that everybody had an understanding of the benefit of ambulance services that were affordable and that were self-sustaining, I guess, to a certain extent, and professional. And I'm just going to invite you, if you wanted to say anything else, if there's anything else you wanted to add, to come on up for a work session.
So we're very fortunate in this community. I think that if you go back, as Northern indicated, about 12 years ago, it looked like OVAC was in a lot of trouble, like a lot of local ambulance corps. In the last 20 some odd years, people have had to work 2 jobs. Volunteering became very, very difficult. It was a matter of survival for OVAC, for us as a community, to put together the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District, which is a special taxing district. Not only did it save OVAC, but it became a model for the entire county. And throughout the state, people talk about how this operation exists and functions. And as you all know, with the 2% tax cap, sharing of services is critically important. Nick makes a tremendous effort to go out and help other communities that find themselves in the same difficulty that we had about a dozen years ago. So we're very excited. This is going to be the 10th anniversary of the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District. I want to thank all of the town board members, the village board, and our other community partners for making sure that this continues. And I think we're very lucky. If we were to go out into the marketplace, we could never afford to get the kind of services that we're getting now. We don't pay any profit to any professional ambulance corps that's looking to not only provide the services but make money. any money that's put into this goes into the operation for the benefit of our citizens. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just as a reminder, for this 10th anniversary celebration is March, May. Sorry, May. I knew it was an M month.
Thursday, May 23rd. I believe it's at 6:30 p.m. There'll be formal invitations and
And we will be honoring the folks who really made a difference and who have stayed and maintained their relationship with Mid Hudson Ambulance District, which includes Richard Wishney, Dr. Seebacher, Dr. Nigro, and our own chief, Nick Franzoso. And they are all very, very deserving of the honoring. So thanks again. And also, just as a reminder, we have a couple of big holidays coming up, and we know that that's going to be a very busy time for you. So if everybody gets a chance, please do thank all of our first responders, including the Ambulance Corps, for their many hours and dedicated service.
thanks.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
Sorry. One last thing.
Okay. one last thing.
So with respect to the contract
Yes.
itself, so basically it's a service agreement between the district and OVAC, which in the past has been a 3-year contract. And it basically, I mean, the insurance terms are going to be the same. The payment terms are the same. The contract doesn't dictate the dollar amount, but rather the breakdown between how much the town of Ossining pays and how much the town of Newcastle pays. But I think we were sort of hoping to ask council if we could consider a 5-year contract in this instance. She says no. So we're going to stick with the 3, the 2019 through 2021.
I mean, I think I would have to look into that a little bit. I know in certain instances you're not supposed to bind a future board, so that I would have to look into more of the specifics, which I could certainly do in advance. I don't know when you were considering putting this on for resolution next week or something.
Sometime
or-
before the end of the year.
Okay, so we can certainly look into that and see what the options are, but I certainly understand having it be longer so that you have it locked in and have the certainty, but we could talk about that.
Okay.
We know we're going to continue to need ambulance services. This is, I think, because it was set up, something was set up with our local agency. You know, there's a lot of benefits to it, to have the stability and know that we can count on that, and also provide the stability for continuation of services. I think we just thought it would be helpful, and like Maddie Zahach said, our budget director, it doesn't have a dollar amount as much as it is the agreement itself. So the ability to change the terms.
Council finds that the contract can only be limited to a 3-year period, so as not to bind future boards. There may be possibly an option for an additional 3 years. And that
Sure.
would-
That's a good suggestion. We certainly have done that with other.
That's a common, and you know, at the board's discretion, you could extend it for X period of time. There are some automatic renewals with an opt-out period. It's just I would need to look at the draft right now, which
That may be the best.
and see where you are with it and what the specific circumstances are. But believe me, I'm not disagreeing with
yeah.
the great work that OVAC
sure.
does or the
Why not?
need for the services.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great night. And happy Thanksgiving. Awesome. Okay. So next up, we are joined tonight by Maida Dixit, okay, from the Office of Architect Ed Weinstein, to discuss the Village Pier Extension Project, which has been in the works under the oversight of Gareth Huffam from Hudson Valley Arts and Science for a number of years now. The purpose of tonight's presentation, and I hope I don't steal any of your thunder, Maida, is to show the town board the quote-unquote final design that evolved from the many iterations that resulted from stakeholder and informal agency feedback. Councilwoman Feldman and I have been involved in many of the stakeholder meetings and presentations to the DEC, as has the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club, but we wanted to make sure the entire town board is familiar with the final form going to the next stage. There are indications from the DEC and Army Corps that this design should have a reasonable chance of getting permitted as is, or with only minor adjustments. And as I understand it from Gareth, permit applications have been completed and are ready to be mailed out, and he's very much hoping they can have a 2018 timestamp on them. It's important to remember that even if the total design is approved by the permitting agencies, Ossining may then decide what parts of it to pursue for construction funding, when or if at all. While this is one is strictly a village-based application as per the DEC's instructions not to include potential town components this time around. Gareth is seeking the town board's blessing to submit the applications to ensure that both Austinans are in agreement with the proposed use of our collective waterfront. Maida, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. That's a very good briefing and introduction of the project.
And I will thank Gareth for it since he gave it to me.
Okay. So I just want to reiterate the fact that I'm not presenting anything with the intent of getting it built like right away, but it's more to just get town's blessings and approval to submit it to DEC and Army Corps. Because once we officially submit, they can come with things that we need to adjust. You know, for now, it's the design and the layout that they have agreed, but small parts and small details will be decided once we submit a final presentation to them. Okay, so most of you are familiar with the layout and the exercise that we've been going through for past almost 1.5 years. The colored image that you see is the most recent layout, which is option number 38. So we have worked through 37 alternatives, and now everyone looks to be on the same page, including OBCC, the village, Department of Environmental Conservation, and Army Corps. So I'll quickly run through the basics that you already know. This is option 38, and we are looking for support from the town board to submit the applications just for approvals. Once we submit, DEC principally have agreed with what we have now, but they might come up with stuff like saying the materials to use, it's more environmental friendly or non-environmental friendly, or you know, how big or small the piles could be, but the design they've mostly agreed. The objective of this project is to extend the pier to deeper water. As we all know that the current pier is being operated by Metro North, and it serves approximately 500 riders every day, and we are looking to extend the pier so that some recreational activities can also come into the town. And one of the good thing of doing this would be that this can be a pilot project for future waterfront development and improvements for both town and the village. And once and if this project gets approved, it would also be supporting future projects and, you know, future grants. It is more likely that future grants, people can go get future grants when this as a pilot project gets approved and built. The kind of ships that the village had in mind would be coming to this pier would be more recreational, which would be more like this. So it's the clear water that we were considering as the major, the main ship that would be coming, and recreational vessels that would be coming to the extended pier. The extension is, as I go, is pretty much in, I wanted to show how the existing pier is. The existing pier goes all the way up to here, which is Metro North. And what you see here is the moorings that the OBCC has right now. So when you look at the proposed alternatives, it is not really changing anything. It's just changing the layout and the direction of the moorings. So, you know, essentially OBCC will still have the number of moorings that it has in the present day. And it's also in sync with what's being proposed. So it's a win-win situation for both. It's getting addressed. Whatever the issues were with OBCC has been addressed here with respect to their moorings. And if we go back and look at the Google Earth image, you would see that the current moorings are pretty far from, so the smaller boats that you see, these are basically the moored boats. So this is 2010, and this is after the extension, which is 2014. So you would see that there is still a pretty wide gap between the existing Metro North Pier and where these boats are moored. So when we proposed this alternative, we did a bunch of options. We did the pier going perpendicular. We did the pier, extending further west. We did OBCC. One of the OBCC suggestions was to have docks on the north side. We did that, but DC is not really appreciative because of the depth of the water and the fish habitat that happens in this region. And then there was another option where we were going further out in the south. Again, OBCC thought that the distance between their moorings to the proposed alternative is not great, so we further reduced it further. So now the current alternative that you see is the distances have been pretty wide. So anything that's moored here and anything that's coming into these docks or the clear water, if clear water is coming here, is not going to impact what is already moored or the operations of OBCC. So so this is respecting what's already going on, and what OBCC's idea was to keep things the way they are, and allow maximum number of boats that get moored now, also in future once this operation comes. So this is what it will look like. It's pretty compact, so nothing is really big and out there that's that's trying to sort of impact or impact negatively the moored boats or the movement of OBCC, because these distances are pretty wide. So I have boards here, so if people want to look at the distances and anything in detail, you can walk up to the boards and see what the distance is between the mooring here and the docks that are proposed. Again, like, there are 3 elements to this. Technically 4. You have a fishing pier here, and then there is a dock here for clear water. So at one point 2 clear waters can be docked to this one, but that's an unlikely situation. So in most of the cases there would be one big boat that would be here, and then again there are these transient docks which are more like this. These are these are pretty much approved by DEC because they didn't want the surface area to be a lot when we have these docks. So the total surface area increase, including the pier, the fishing pier, the docks, is about 700 square foot. The sections are like this. So everything is transient, nothing is fixed other than the pier. So this can be there, this can be removed, this cannot be there, but this is a decision that would be taken later on. Once the application is approved, what part of this proposal is getting built will be something that's going to be decided later on. But this as a project as a whole is going to be sent to DEC and Army Corps to be approved with 4 different elements, pier being the first, fishing pier, dock, and then the 2 transient docks here. In one of the previous alternatives, having eco docks here for small kayaks and canoes, which DEC was not pretty much impressed with, and thought that it's quite in shallow water and all of that. So we removed all that. So the present application package did not include anything that DEC was not in agreement with, or that was getting close to the OBCC dingy dock or OBCC operations. So everything has been removed, and the present alternative is has tried its best. It's the most preferred alternative in terms of being 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 respectful to all the other operations in the area. So yes, the process steps are, once we get town and village approval, we will submit these applications to the agencies, and then the agencies take about 6 to 9 weeks, or sometimes even more, doing back and forth about details and construction and the process and everything. Once we get the approvals, then the final design and construction drawings will be built, and then the design will be fully permitted, and then what will be built will be a decision after all this happens. It can be a phased construction. Like, you could do one thing in phase 1. The pier has to be phase 1, definitely, because that's the most important part, the pier extension. Everything else can be phased. Like everything else can be phase 2, phase 3, or phase 4. So that's pretty much from my end. I will take any questions.
So first, I'd just like to thank you very much for somewhat summarizing what I believe has been a very complex and lengthy process. And there have been so many stakeholders involved in this. I don't know that there is any one of the stakeholders that said, yes, this is exactly what I wanted, because everybody had a compromise. And for that, I want to thank everybody who was involved in the process. DEC is one tough customer. I can tell you that for sure. Many of what we would have thought would have been benefits, they found as negatives. And even though we would have even thought that some of the benefits were benefits to the environment, benefits to the use, the recreational use of the Hudson River, the kayak launch, or all of these different things. And, there was some other disturbance. So, as we know, for every new introduction of anything, there could be unintended consequences. They're looking out for the unintended consequences to the overall environment, and we appreciate that. Sometimes we would have appreciated them to see what some of the other benefits were that we believed were construed that might have offset some of the other negatives. But nevertheless, we're grateful that we have finally gotten to a stage where they are, where we're cautiously optimistic that they're going to actually approve the proposed design. And then again, as you mentioned, the last part of this grant is to have design and construction drawings, not to actually have anything built, just to have the drawings and then hopefully get the designs approved. And at that point, presumably the village would most likely look for some other grant dollars and with some kind of match. And I don't know if they're going to come asking us to help with that or not, but this is ultimately a benefit from an economic development point of view, and there are local businesses that benefit from it, as well as a benefit for people in Ossining and people who are coming to visit Ossining to take full advantage of the Hudson River, or fuller advantage of the Hudson River. So anyway, I think it's a great project. I'm very happy that we're finally at a stage where we haven't agreed upon drawing that is going to get submitted for approval. Comments? Anybody?
Just speaking of the kayaks, does that affect the kayak launching that they do from there? I can't really.
That's been removed. The kayak
been
launch has
removed.
been removed from the final draft.
But the good news is that we have a very fantastic place to launch.
Yeah, the
kayaks
beach
right
is
now.
a much safer, more realistic area to launch from. So we already have that naturally.
Right.
And
So-
we're planning on doing a fix up of that anyway. So
Correct.
we're all good there. Right. I still am kind of unclear on if these are going to be permanently in the water or removed in the winter.
That's something that I'm not aware of, so I'll have to get back to you on that. But if they needed to be removed, they could easily be removed because these are just, just floating docks. These are just floating docks that could be taken off. It's just the pier that's the fixed
Easy.
element. So
I think part of the question is storage.
Where would
I
you
do
put
believe that the village has identified places for storage. So if in fact they're floating docks that are planned to be removed in the after the season, I think it would be helpful to know where the plans are to store them.
sure.
I don't think that's going to preclude us from.
No, especially
Approving-
the first draft, it would
Right.
just be the two
Right.
sections because the rest of it's fixed. But I'm really just kind of curious on what equipment would be needed. Will we be hiring somebody? What's the cost of that? And where will it be stored?
Anybody else have any questions?
Are we
Thoughts, ideas,
responsible for it?
concerns?
No, sorry.
I mean, I do think, I know that I had conversations with Paul Frioli about this, and he did indicate to me that the village does have room to store the docks at some point. That's what he told me. And, but we can, again, I think some kind of clarification on that would be helpful. But I certainly hope that that's not going to preclude us from approving this moving forward, as we're at a still very preliminary stage for that to happen,
No,
for any
I'm
of this to
just
happen,
trying to do a little
Yeah.
board. Thank you.
Anybody have questions? No. Anybody? have
One more
any-
question. How wide are the fingers?
Do you know, what do you actually need from the town board in order to go forward? Do you need a certified resolution? Do you need a letter? Do you need them to sign off? Do you know?
I believe it'll be a sign off, like of the board members saying that, this is good to go ahead for approval.
I think it probably doesn't hurt us to adopt a resolution saying that
agree.
we are in favor of the plans that have been presented to us moving forward to the next stage of
And
approval.
possibly authorizing the supervisor to sign any documents in case you do need to sign off on the application. I don't really even know.
I don't believe we do. I think, again, it's an application by the village. They're just looking for our support more than anything else at this stage, since we don't have a quote unquote vested interest in directly in the application approval of the documents. We have a vested interest, but we don't have a, official vested interest. That's all. So does town board see any reason to object to this or any problems with it? Otherwise, it would be great to have some of those answers, and I think we would try to put it on for our next meeting to try to get some kind of a resolution adopted. And if we could get if there are any details specific that Gareth would like included in that for the application, if that would be helpful, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. I'll let Gareth know that.
In that case, Mira, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We appreciate your time.
Do you want me to leave these boards here?
Does anybody want to take a look at those boards? I'm fine. I don't need to. I've seen them all. No.
I have a question for council though. With the pieces that are in our water, do we need to ensure that on the town property?
Sorry. Say, ensure that? What does that mean?
Some of the dock is in town property. Were we responsible for ensuring that portion?
Answer that question.
I would need to know more about it. I mean, it's the village's project, right?
But it's in the town.
village's pier. I understand.
Or it's in
so,
the, I'm just asking.
I mean, it's
it's
something
just a
that
question.
once you get closer.
It's a big, it's an area that, has potential liability. So I'm just asking.
I mean, it's something that we would need to work out with the village, one way or the other. But I can't say.
Okay, I know we're far away from that. It's just a question. But I'd like
It's
to
certainly
look into
something
it.
to look into.
Thank you.
Somebody got to be responsible.
Right. Well, anybody sues everybody that could possibly be sued. So I'm
Yep.
just kind of wondering. Wait, it's in the state of New York, the country of,
Okay. Are we good to move on?
Yes.
Okay. So we are midway through the process of creating our 2019 budget, which has been in progress since late August. The board has met with all of our departments about their requests, and I have made my recommendations, and we believe we are fairly close to what eventually will be adopted by this board, hopefully, on December 11th. Our plan is to adopt a tax cap compliant budget for the 8th year in a row. While we still have some tweaking to do overall, the board has generally demonstrated that they are satisfied with what we've come up with, and my special thanks to Budget Director Maddie Zahach and Town Deputy Comptroller Dale Ferreira for their work during this process, which is incredibly detailed and complex and time consuming, and especially overcoming the hurdle of down computers in the middle of it all was quite impressive at the least. So, and without your help, we wouldn't be able to continue to deliver the exceptional service residents have come to expect within a tax cap compliant budget. So thank you for that. Maddie, you are going to give us a presentation tonight on where we stand at this time. But if anybody has any questions from the public, feel free to join us next Tuesday, November 27th at 7:30 p.m. for the public hearing on the budget at the courthouse on Spring Street. You can also submit questions to the board by emailing us at tc@townofaustining.com. Zach, would you like to take over?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So all of the board members have a copy of the presentation in front of you. This is going to be put up on the website tomorrow. So if anyone at home wants to take a look at it in a little bit more detail, The town board has now sat in on a budget meeting with all 9 of our departments, and that is secondary to the initial meeting that they have with myself, the supervisor, and our finance team. So all of the requests are sort of combed through a couple of different times, and I have to say, I think this has probably been the first budget that I've worked on with the town where we have made so few changes. Many of the department heads came in with, very clear goals and objectives, and they didn't put anything in that we found to be unreasonable or, very different from last year, frankly. So this is largely a rollover budget that we're taking a look at for 2019 with a couple of different changes. So I'm going to walk you through that now. Slide back over. So the budget preparation process, we're looking at the budget for the town of Ossining for January 1st, 2019 through the end of that year. Usually in the beginning of August, we hand out estimate forms to our departments and basically say, what is it that you're looking to do differently next year? We have some really thoughtful questions that we ask, if I do say so myself, about sort of, what are we doing that's working really well? What could we be doing more of? And what's not working? Where are we over budgeting? Where are we under budgeting? How are you doing on staffing? Are there any things in your department that we've traditionally planned to do that you would like to discontinue? Are there any fees that you'd like to change? Which I know many of our department heads have taken us up on this, and they've reached out to their peers in other municipalities to sort of see, where we fall in the middle of the pack as far as fees go. And, they get a lot of great ideas for different things that we can implement here. And we've seen that a lot with several of our department heads this year. As far as the tentative budget or the supervisor's budget, that was submitted at, I think, 4:25 p.m. on October 30th, which is probably the closest to a buzzer beater that we've done in a while. But as the supervisor mentioned, we did have some computer difficulties in the 2 weeks leading up to the submission. And then as far as this board is concerned, we have about another month to make the changes that you see fit before the budget must be adopted by New York State law. And we have it planned for the December 11th legislative session, which also gives us a little bit of wiggle room should we need it. So anyone who's familiar with the town of Ossining's budget knows that it's a little complicated. We have many, many funds. We have the town general, which is the one that covers everyone who calls Ossining home. So all of the village of Ossining, 91% of the village of Briarcliff Manor, and then the unincorporated town, which is about 5,500 residents. For those 5,500 residents, the town of Ossining provides other services that we don't provide to folks in the village, including police services, our highway department, building planning, code enforcement, and zoning. And then we have many special districts for those unincorporated residents: water, light, fire, refuse, sewer districts. And then the ambulance district is a special district charge that goes only to residents of the village of Ossining and the unincorporated area. That does not include Briarcliff. So there should be a familiar slide if you've seen one of our presentations before, as far as how your property tax is distributed. The town of Ossining, so this highlighted portion, we're talking about the town general share, which is basically all of the administrative services for the town of Ossining, as well as our Meals on Wheels program and our parks, is less than 3% of the average Ossining tax bill. So you can see the school district is definitely the lion's share, between 60 and 70%. Westchester County is pretty low also, between 10 and 12%. So in addition to the 3% that you pay the town, you will also pay either the village of Ossining or village of Briarcliff tax, or the unincorporated and special district taxes, which can be between 15 and 25% of your overall tax bill. So when I talk about those administrative services covered by the town general, this is a pretty comprehensive list of what that's paying for. So we have our town village consolidated court. We have the work that's done in the supervisor's office. So administration, the budget process, as well as grant administration, tax collection, our assessor's office and the Board of Assessment review function, our town clerk, our elections, our senior nutrition program and services, which include transportation for our seniors, all of our town parks, which are Ryder, Cedar Lane, Gerlach, Sally Swope, Lewis Engel, Buck Johnson, and Lit Park. Does anyone know where Lit Park is? Jackie Shaw? Yes, it's a tiny, very nice park right on Tappan Terrace. Good for sitting and reading. Also out of the general fund, we pay for rent on this very building where we sit right now, as well as the court. And then for the senior center and then the summer concert series and the fireworks. So all those fantastic concerts that you see down at the waterfront every summer, as well as the annual fireworks display for Independence Day. The hayride's in there also. So the line where all of this is charged, this last line here, summer concert series and fireworks, is the celebrations line in the general fund.
Just to add one more to make highlight some of the other wonderful services that come out of the supervisor's office.
Microphone.
We also have the human resources.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so now when we talk about, unincorporated area services, so this is for the folks who live in the unincorporated town, this additional 20 or 15 to 26% I mentioned earlier. Here's what's covered by that. So we have our police services, which right now and going forward for the next 4 years, at least, will be covered by the Village of Ossining. We have some recreation services, and that's for the folks who live in the unincorporated area. Our building department, much of our engineering contract with the Village of Ossining, planning, zoning, stormwater management, and our highway department. As far as special districts, we have our consolidated sewer district. We have the North State Road Sewer District, which I believe when we were looking at it today, there's only 2 years left before that district can actually be dissolved. So does that sound right? Yeah. So that district was established so that the folks who benefited from that specific sewer improvement would be the only ones charged for it. And so the debt on that is going to be paid off in the next 2 years. And then that falls away and we have one less fund in our budget. So that's pretty exciting. Then we have our water, our street lighting, our fire protection, our refuse collection, suburban carting, and our ambulance services, which we just heard an awful lot about earlier tonight. So as far as budget highlights are concerned, I'll just go through every bullet here quickly. Our assessment has gone up considerably, townwide over 2.5%, and then almost 2% in the unincorporated funds. As you may remember, the 200, which is the unincorporated, and the 310, which is the highway, both of those funds cover exactly the same population, so it's a blended rate and the same assessment for both there. We've continued our 5-year capital project, including proposed methods of financing. We're seeing an 8% increase to our health insurance premium with the Empire plan this year, which is less than we predicted, and it might come in even lower than that. So we have our fingers crossed for something more like a 7, which is still not great, but better than 8. That rhymed. We are looking at a new 4-year contract with the Village of Ossining for police services. The town decided to continue services with the village. The Village of Ossining PBA contract is I think they're 2 years in now, so we're sort of coming in midstream, and they saw some pretty substantial increases. So that's going to be reflected in our contract going forward. But we are, still getting an outstanding deal on police services. We're still far lower than we were when we were with Westchester County, and I think that continues for the tenure of the proposed 4-year contract going forward. We, as in past years, still are transferring $100,000 from general fund to supplement the cemetery budget. We're still moving that $84,793 to the unincorporated fund from general fund, which is a direct proportion of the mortgage recording tax based on the assessment for that fund. And then finally, we're only putting in less than $25,000 of general fund balance. Last year, I think we were somewhere around 65. So we're doing a little bit better this year in the general fund as far as lowering expenses. So our tax cap, that should say for 2019. The New York State tax cap legislation says that a municipality can raise the levy, which is the amount of money we raise in taxes, by either 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. And for the first time in 2019, all towns were allowed a 2% increase. It's very exciting. In addition to that, we had a very small growth factor for the 2019 budget, which accounts for brick and mortar construction within the town limits during the past year. So basically what was added to the assessment roll. In 2018, it was 0%. So we will take what we can get. We're also entitled to carry over funds that we didn't use towards the 2018 levy for this budget, which is about $35,000. And we're still under the tax cap, so we have a little bit to carry over to the, that should say, 2020 budget. So as I mentioned, the average assessed value for a home in Ossining has gone up, and the town general tax bill has gone up about $5 per family over what they were paying in 2018. So again, town town general, is for all of those administrative services as well as celebrations, parks, and senior services. For all of those things, the average household is paying about $326 a year, which is a pretty good deal, if you ask me. As far as the unincorporated town and what they're paying for some of those additional services I mentioned, $577 a year for refuse and recycling, which again is with suburban carting, fire protection, which we get from the Village of Ossining and the Village of Briarcliff, depending on where it is that you live, and street lighting, which is serviced by the Village of Ossining. $80 a year for ambulance services, and then $114 per year for sewer service. So for all of those things, as well as for police and our highway services and our exceptional roads that we enjoy in the unincorporated town, the average homeowner pays less than $3,000 a year in town taxes. And that's based on the updated 2018 roll assessment for homes in the unincorporated town. So this year we are thinking about doing something that we haven't done in a while, which is borrowing quite a deal of money to spend on equipment. So we've had a lot of requests from our departments in terms of what sort of vehicles that they need. And here is a pretty comprehensive list of where we are right now. So for the highway department, we're looking for a replacement Freightliner, which is one of the very, very large trucks, as well as a utility and service truck with a hoist, which is used not only for the sewer lift stations when they need to take the tops out of those, but then also for many of the catch basin covers and so on. So this is basically a truck that goes out on the road, pretty frequently and can help with a lot of the manual tasks that, will keep our guys a little bit safer. As far as the parks department, they are in desperate need of trucks. They are down to one truck at present. So we're looking to get them a dump truck with a plow, a utility service truck similar to the one that the highway department is asking for, just without the hoist. And then we're looking to borrow, this is a very rough estimate, $200,000 for paving the roads in Cedar Lane, so the big one going up to the dog park, as well as both internal roads at Ryder Park and the road up to the basketball court at Gerlach. So we have not measured this out. This is a very rough estimate, so when the time comes to actually do that borrow, we'll have it a little bit closer. As far as the cemetery, the truck that they have over there is 21 years old, and we actually bought it from the Village of Ossining 4 years ago for $1, so it's ready to go. So the superintendent of cemeteries has asked that that be replaced, and he's also asking for $30,000 to do a whole lot of stonework, continuing with the monuments, and then also to restore the receiving vault. And then finally, as far as the senior nutrition program, we're looking to replace the bus that they have currently with an electric bus, so something that they could charge. It'll obviously save us on gas. And this is something for which the town applied for CDBG money. So $75,000 would be the town's match. I believe $75,000 would come from CDBG funding if we get it. And there's also an $80,000 rebate from New York State on that vehicle. So it's quite an expensive vehicle, but it looks like we would get it for $75,000 if we are successful with the CDBG. So right now in this borrow, we're looking for about $850,000, half of which is coming from the general fund. So this is something that we continue to explore with our finance department. We're going to need to get a little bit closer on these numbers in the coming days, mainly because specifically with the Freightliner, there's a 14-month lead time on ordering such a vehicle. And so we need to make sure we have a bond resolution and pass the 30-day estoppel period before we can start a purchase order for this one in particular. As far as capital projects are concerned, as is our recent tradition, we plan on doing a lot of them in-house, but of course there's going to be a couple things that are outside of our guys' wheelhouse. So as I mentioned, paving of internal road in the parking lot at Gerlach, as well as blacktopping the basketball court that's over there and replacing the basketball hoops. We had, I believe it was General Electric, donated hoops a couple years ago and they were vandalized, so they need to be replaced. Something we've been talking about with Bill Garrison, our recreation superintendent, is replacing the field lighting structure with LED fixtures. So all of the streetlights in the town now are on LED, and we think that we should follow suit over there at Gerlach, not just for energy efficiency, but also for convenience of our staff, because the lighting system over there leaves much to be desired, according to our staff and the folks who use the field. And then finally, finishing off this hill over here. So I don't think this is what it looks like at this present moment, but I know that there's a lot of plantings planned for that hill. So it'll make it a very nice entrance to our brand new looking pavilion. Sally Swope Park. I know this is a pet project for a couple of us. So we're looking to restore the trails there as well as install some drainage. And I know that there's a couple different ideas that our parks foreman has been talking about as far as what would be a feature in this park. Supervisor, do you want to talk about that at all? Or yeah. And I know that there's also talk about using porous pavers up there, which is something that the town is looking to explore to be easier on our environment and also help with a lot of the drainage problems that we have. Engle Park is going to be kind of quiet this year. They got a lot of work the last couple of years down there, so we're looking to do some additional kayak storage as well as enhance the sprinkler system over there on the field. And then all of the restrooms in all of our bathrooms are going to get new fixtures this year. So new toilets, sinks, urinals, and stall dividers, which is something that's been in the capital plan for a couple years and just has not gotten off the ground.
No, I just want to add that we have a couple of different grants for Engle Park that we're waiting to hear back about, and they are basically for planning, master plan for Engle Park that would add significant improvements and change the overall layout of the park if in fact we were to get those. But it is a significant expense, so we're hoping to get some grant money from the state to make this just a better park for everybody, since it is one of our highest used parks.
As far as Ryder Park, this is probably where we have the most work to do in 2019. Geez. So completing the pavilion game area, which is up next to the pavilion. The board may remember it used to be a basketball court. We actually moved the basketball court down to one of the tennis courts across the street, still inside the park. And the plan is to install turf or let it be grass. We were hoping to do turf so that the guys wouldn't have to mow it and it could be a little bit less low maintenance, or more low maintenance, less maintenance. So we're still working on exactly what it's going to be to finish that area. We also plan to, with the help of USTA and the office of Senator David Carlucci, replace and resurface the tennis courts. We have to do some significant repairs to the caretaker's house, which we have been working with John Hamilton on sort of assessing what needs to be done. Some work to repair the dam and pipe in sections of the brook down by the lower fields, as well as I mentioned earlier, repave the two internal roads in the park. Cedar Lane, our dock and path project continues. The dog park road, light poles and LED lights for the dog park road, and then also replacing the pavilion bathrooms. We have a sort of prefab building that holds the restrooms up next to the pavilion. Our parks foreman has basically indicated to us that it would be much less expensive to just replace it wholesale than continue to do repairs on it. So that is in the plan as well. And then we have Dale Cemetery. So we've made a little bit of progress at Dale Cemetery. The board may remember that we put out a ban last year to do a lot of the work on the caretaker's cottage. We have gotten the work done on the roof, and the next stage is to work on the chimney and the porch. The supervisor's office continues to work with Stephen Tilley Architects to figure out what needs to be done on the rest of the house. And then, as I mentioned when we were talking about bonding, continue the restoration work on the monuments and on the receiving vault. And McCarthy Drive. So this is going to be a multi-year project. We've been working with Dolph Rotfeld Engineering, as well as our engineering team from the village, Paul Frioli and Andy Teese. They have done the borings, and they're working their way through the design work. We're hoping that that's going to be wrapping up in the next couple of months, and then work is scheduled to begin sometime in 2019, when the village will also be planning to replace the water main there. So what could change between now and when the budget gets adopted? The first is workers' compensation rates. So for many, many years, the town has been with the Comp Alliance, and we've been very happy with the service we've gotten from them. When we sat down with them about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they gave us a quote, and I know that our broker has been chipping away at that quote, so it's likely that that's going to get lower. We also met today with a gentleman who represents PERMA, which is basically a competing agency, and they have offered to submit a quote to us. It may be a little late for this year, but we're still going to take a look at it. Either way, we think we can probably get a little bit lower than what's in the budget now. Election costs associated with Project Forward.
So we continue to talk with our community. We had a presentation recently by Michael Conti, who's our consultant for this project, and we continue to talk with the community. So we're not 100% sure if we're going to be going forward with an election, but if so, it would probably happen in the spring sometime. And if that were to happen, that would be an additional cost to us. We're probably going to end up having to include it in the budget. We do have hopes that we might get some additional grant funds through the Department of State for that, but we're not sure that yet is going to happen. Although they have in the past indicated that that is something that they might be able to pay for, since especially we're looking to add to what the original proposal was, to look at the the other departments that we had discussed in Project Forward survey, and you can still see that on the Project Forward website, which is, there's a link to the website through the town website as well.
Thank you. Next up, for many years, the town had a section in the budget where we would make a contribution to the Ossining Historical Society, which was basically for the care and maintenance of records. And probably back in 2009, 2010, somewhere in that neighborhood, that $1,000 was cut from the budget because of
Economic downturn.
those things. And so the Historical Society reached out to the supervisor and requested that that be put back in this year. And the board said that yes, in fact, they would like to. So we actually have to build that line back into the budget. So that's coming. It's $1,000. The sewer unit charge is something that the board had discussed in our budget meetings, but I think that's something that we need to discuss again before the budget is adopted. Right now it's set at $52, and I know there's been talk for the last 5 years at least about raising that a couple of dollars at the very least. And that's something that's sort of like a one-shot deal for folks who live in the unincorporated area. It's something you're already paying, but it has not been adjusted in many years. So that's something that the board is considering. As far as adjustments to insurance, I talked a little bit. We're hoping that the healthcare is going to come down a bit, and we have a little bit of moving around to do with some of our auto and liability insurance. And then finally, we have a bunch of administrative changes that we sort of talked to our departments and the finance office while we were around the budget table. Basically, finding a way to standardize where certain expenses are charged across our department. So for example, things like professional dues, meetings, sort of give the clerks who are entering our vouchers a little bit more clarity on what items should be charged to which line. So it's going to be a net zero in terms of money, but we're looking to sort of reorganize the lines a little bit. And that's a project that I'm going to be working on next week with the help of Dale. So more on that. As far as changing of dollar amounts, that's not going to happen, just distribution. So that is where we are. The budget is available at townofossining.com. There's a hard copy available in the office of the town clerk, as well as at the Ossining Public Library. And as the supervisor mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions, you can reach us in the office at 762-6001. And if you'd like to email the town board, tc@townofossining.com, we'll reach all 5 of the town board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bravo.
All of it. Good work.
Thank you, Dale.
Okay. Are there any questions or further discussion from the town board? All right. So moving right along. Okay. Next up, we're going to have a further discussion about our proposed solar code local law. I'm just waiting for that noise to stop, and then I will continue because it's loud. Okay, so we continue to work on providing a framework for solar installations in the town of Austining, which would make it easier to install solar, but with oversight where we believe it is necessary to have some. We're looking at establishing 3 tiers, which would each be considered different as far as permitting and regulations are concerned: rooftop, ground mounted, and then larger ground mounted installations. We've more like solar farms. We've continued to receive feedback on this local law from the public and from other interested parties. And most recently, we received lengthy input from a gentleman who is a constituent who lives in Austining, who has had some experience in the industry and is aware of new technology on the horizon, as well as he had some questions about terminology that's included in our draft, which might be unnecessarily limiting. I'm hoping that we can discuss his comments, and our planner, who was not able to join us tonight, could make any tweaks to the current state of our draft solar code before the next public hearing on Tuesday. So, with that said, I'm just going to grab the comments that Mr. Desmarais had submitted. Also, I wanted to comment that I had gotten some feedback on the question of sheep versus pollinators, and I think that the comment back from the planner from the Orange County Department of Planning was that I just want to see what it says. You could mandate the use of pollinators or sheep, as they don't work well together. So you could say basically one or the other. So if you have one, then you're not gonna have the other, vice versa. So if somebody was looking to use sheep for maintenance and landscape maintenance and whatever, then they would, as mentioned, probably eat up those pollinators. Which is important. I think the distinction would be that maybe we don't mandate either one of those, but allow one versus or expect one versus the other. So you need to either be planting pollinators or utilizing sheep for landscaping. And if you're going to use sheep for landscaping, then that would be a way that you could necessarily avoid the planting of pollinators. Is that clear? For your purposes, I know. Can you just take notes?
I kind of prefer the pollinators.
Well,
honestly.
are those the only 2 options? Is it something where that should be more illustrative?
No, I mean, I think that basically we're saying we want people to be planting pollinators.
Right.
But on the flip side, if for some reason they wanted to use sheep for landscaping purposes, that would preclude their necessity to use pollinators. So they'd have to commit to one or the other, I think.
Lamb chops right there.
And you could have a nice sweater.
Okay. So anyway, that was the answer to that question. As far as Mr. Desmarais' comments, I'm just going to go through them a little bit. His first comment was about ground-mounted solar system. Solar-powered garden lights appear to meet this definition. A minimum energy generating capacity should be stipulated. Some of the so I spoke briefly with our planner David Stallman about some of these comments, and he felt that because many of them were not included in the recommended NYSERDA draft local law or template that they've shared with municipalities, that some of the comments were unduly detailed to the point where that it might hinder our ability to continue to move forward with this local law. This might be one of them. So again, some of the things are assumed or are general enough that if it came up, and I don't know, Christy, if you wanted to comment on this at all, it might not be necessary. I think some of his more substantive comments are worth considering, but some of the language gets a little bit nitpicky. Is a way I could put it.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly
my
what it is.
understanding is that David Stallman did use the NYSERDA template as a starting off point, and I think one of the issues that you may discuss in a little bit is, how things are going to change over time, and you know, you don't want people to be able to run amok, and certainly that's not what the board is trying to do, because there's certainly plenty of oversight included within this local law for various different levels of development. But you also, to a little bit of an extent, may be better off leaving it so that the planning board can kind of, and the town board, because you're going to be looking at it in the context of a floating zone, can kind of look at it on a case by case basis, and not overly restricting what maybe what different properties may come up with, or what may work for them, or what they may be allowed to do in the future.
I actually see a point to the, you know, like I have little stick in the ground solar, you know, not to include landscaping, solar landscaping features below X amount of, you know, voltage.
Right, this is additionally does not apply to a system that's not anchored to the ground, a system that floats on water on a small barge, or one that's merely placed on the ground and it supports weighted down. Again, you know, we could try to tweak the language. I think that, again, if we're gonna get, I don't think that there's going to be any
It could be one line saying
enforcement.
over.
I think that there's just not going to be any enforcement of solar powered garden lights saying, oh, you know, we have a solar code now and you put in those solar powered garden lights, so we're going to, you know, hit you with a citation for not going before.
Yeah,
you
one
get an
sentence that
approval.
not over X amount of, you know,
That's the question.
megahertz or
of
whatever.
this.
Well, to a
Detail.
certain extent, you know, the building inspector is going to be the one that's interpreting this in first respect, because he'll be the one that receives any applications for any such projects. And if you start saying what doesn't get included specifically, then it could lead to a situation where there may be something that you don't think of right off the bat that you don't specifically exempt. But
Okay.
if there's a broader way to encompass,
I mean, he's just talking about to discuss a minimum energy generating capacity. That's what he's saying.
I
Stipulate.
think that's fair.
if there's some way to come up with what that number should be. I mean, I don't know what
Okay.
it should be.
Okay, I also don't know.
So, you know, that's another thing. Just it seemed if it may make sense, but it's also a matter of knowing how to articulate that in a way that will make sense in the code.
Okay. Mechanical equipment isn't defined, and there was a note that certain solar installations principal pieces are inverters and batteries, and they're not electrical. They're electrical, not mechanical equipment. So that's another interesting. It's an
I leave that
interesting.
to David.
It's an interesting point whether or not, you know, we want to just change the word mechanical to electrical. Maybe that's all we
Mechanical
need to do.
or electrical. Encompass the whole thing.
Okay. And or.
And or.
Yeah, and or electrical. Solar collector, I thought this was interesting. The definition includes solar hot water systems. These systems are generally small and shouldn't necessarily be roped in with permitting requirements for larger scale solar installations. And I think that that probably is true and significant. So I think that that's something that we should probably consider including. Qualified solar installer, I think that this may or may not come up. Austin, to my knowledge, does not have any certified solar installation companies. So any economic development policy aspect of promoting employment is moot.
One on Chapels North Street Road.
Yeah, I suggest the town not require certified installers, as this will sharply increase the cost of the homeowner. But it says qualified installer, not certified.
They're qualified if they're not certified.
Yeah, I'm with
Well,
her.
that's the point. Most solar installers.
Well, the certification is usually, I could have experience in something but not be certified in it. So certification is just really a piece of paper. Means you took it.
Then the next question would be, then how would you determine qualified if you're not? I mean,
Solar installers capture the entire
It-
tax
It's
benefit.
what you do for your business, and you have a good reputation doing it, I would imagine. You know, some people just choose not to do certification. Like, you know, if you're not certified as a woman business owner.
Is
but
there electrical
Well, here it
licenses
says-
required
Here
for
it
this?
says certified installers do not provide an extra layer of safety as getting certified requires merely taking a short online course.
Yeah, it's
And the
usually
industry
just
is
a
moving
pro forma
towards
thing.
do-it-yourself installations to eliminate the high cost of installers. So IKEA has begun offering solar systems to the do-it-yourself market in Europe. So I think one of the things came up as
We don't require an electrician to do something like this.
there are
Freeze me.
electrical connections that do require.
An electrician to do it.
electrician.
Yeah, because I don't feel good
It's
about,
not a-
you know, electrical
that's an
boxes.
installer. So you could do it yourself, but you would need an electrician. to
Okay,
do it.
that's fine.
'Cause you can do the same thing in your house. You can go all of the installation, but any licensed electrician must sign off on it.
Right.
So it would be all the same. You
Okay,
know,
as long as
gonna
it's like- yeah.
follow all the same building
Okay.
code requirements that would. Right.
All right, then that's fine.
Worrisome overuse of reasonable as a standard. Did you want to discuss that?
Do it again.
Reasonable is, you know, it's a word that's used as kind of like a counter to arbitrary.
evolve.
It's, you know, in some instances, is there possibly a way to be more specific? I don't know. We would have to just have to search every time reasonable is used, but, you know, it's used in your code a lot. It's used in codes a lot and laws because it just creates a baseline standard that you can't just arbitrarily decide something. And to the extent that you want to give some deference to yourselves when you're looking at this, when it comes before you, or the planning board when they're looking at it in the context of a site plan application, to put in illustrations or narratives for every possible scenario as being suggested here is one of the things that may impede this going forward, as the supervisor mentioned, and also kind of tie your hands to situations that you may not know how they may arise going forward for both this board and the planning board.
Right, because it's such a new technology and it's evolving so quickly that I think, having reasonable, which the definition of reasonable today will be completely different than 5 years from now, but it will be a standard in the industry probably.
Okay, so we're just gonna that. Essentially, and then this was about impervious surfaces, which I thought was interesting. Essentially, all ground-mounted systems have a de minimis impact on the amount of impervious surface as the ground remains uncovered. However, as defined in the draft, the ground under the panel is defined as impervious. It's true that they're not. I mean, the water can still get to them. Just like a roof. I mean, whatever, it kind of hits and then falls off. So I'm not exactly sure if that's important or not, but
I think that's probably also related to the amount of coverage you can have
It's a
on
ground
the site,
coverage that we're looking at as opposed to.
which is an issue that's come up.
right. And then we could probably still leave the ground coverage portion of it without saying impervious. I don't know if it's necessary. He's saying anti-reflective coating is not defined and probably unnecessary. I don't think that I really can't comment on that. I don't know one way or the other.
What does the word impervious mean?
It means that water can't get through, is my understanding.
Yeah, it's non-porous.
Non-porous. Right.
And to a certain extent, I mean, I don't know, it may not, it may be true that it's not touching it, but practically speaking, I don't know if you have these panels and then the water's dripping off of them, does that really leave the same sort of access to the spaces underneath the panels or in the middle of the panels that you would have if they weren't there? I don't know.
I mean, it redirects how the water goes, but it doesn't keep the water from seeping into the surface that's under the panels, because the panels are not.
I'm just saying it
mounted
could
on the
cause like
ground.
puddling in certain areas where it wouldn't otherwise. I don't know. We would have to look into what the actual impacts are, because I understand from a practical sense, yes, it's not touching the ground, but is there an effect, or is there, a redirection of drain off that occurs that wouldn't otherwise occur, that creates some sort of distinction that should be.
And also shading, will something grow underneath it? Just wondering.
Yeah, well, I mean, that could impact what grows under it for sure, but it doesn't impact the imperviousness of the surface. So
it would impact the way the water runs off, so that you could end up
way
like
it
the same way
absorbs.
roof, where you're gonna end up,
Right.
so the panels are impervious.
The panels are impervious, but that doesn't create an impervious surface because the ground can still be pervade.
I don't feel like I
Provided.
want to spend a lot of time on that.
No, I again, some of these things I think, as I mentioned, are it's not that they're irrelevant. It's just that this is sort of coming at the end of the review of this, and I don't mean to discount any of it, but I think if we wanted to move forward with this, that we might not want to completely get into the weeds, and then as we move forward, if we find that there are terms that are hindering our ability to get these sort of installations where we think that they are most beneficial, that we could go back and review and adapt and make amendments to the law. So I would just say for some of these things, I don't necessarily want to get into a deep dive on them. I think it might not be necessary, and it might just slow us down. And that's so that's sort of true, I think, about reasonable. It's probably true about impervious. It might be also true about the anti-reflective coating. Section H appears to be directed to Tier 3, but reads it provides requirements for site plan applications. Site plan applications are required for Tier 2. That is a residential application. Section H is onerous for a homeowner. So I think we actually had a little bit
We
of a
agreed with
discussion.
that one.
We did agree with that one, right? We decided that
All roof mounted can be in tier 1.
that was
Is
the
what we were
discussion from our
talking
last
about.
meeting. I think that was included. So all roof mounted would be in Tier 1. The other thing I wanted to bring up was
The discussion
and
with planning
actually it came up at our
building
staff
department.
meeting this morning, I think, with Michael G mentioned that he had some put solar panels on his roof, and while his neighbors had done a lease agreement, he had purchased the panels and was therefore not allowed to generate more than 110% of the electricity that was used in his house. And he didn't understand that. I also don't understand why we would want to limit the
Yeah,
amount of generation.
I would really
So I
like
think we should try to remove that, because I think that in the end, why are we trying to say, okay, nope, sorry, if you collect this much solar, you can't sell back 120% of what you're using, or that extra 20% you can't sell back to.
So that's the
Con
way
Ed.
it's currently drafted, that it puts that restriction
I
on
feel
it.
like the original intention was when people were just starting to put them on their houses, they didn't want them to be businesses. But the reality is, in the way of the world today, I think the more energy generated in green ways, and if somebody wants to do it on their home, as long as it's not an eyesore to their neighbor,
Mhm.
which the planning department or zone or building department would be looking at with these, then I don't really have a problem unless there's an overload problem with the systems.
Right. Okay. I agree with that. And then I'm just gonna kind of skip over. I think again some of the other ones. If there's anything else that had been included in this that anybody wanted to talk about, or one of the comments was the 35% maximum impervious surface was too great. Obviously, we've heard from people who think it's too small, so I think we should just leave that as is. The other comment was Tier 2 cannot be installed in front yards. I think that even though this gentleman doesn't think that that's a good restriction, I think that we all thought it was. And I think that those are the main pieces that were worth discussing. So that's it. Are we good with making
took
those?
I'm good.
notes.
Okay. If anybody saw anything else in there that they wanted to talk about, let me know. But that's, I think, it for us. Okay. So thank you guys, and hopefully we can get a draft for the with those amendments incorporated for our next public hearing, which is Tuesday, November 27th. Okay, moving right along. At our last work session, we suggested some changes to streamline the leaf blower legislation. You have had a chance to review that over the weekend. If you want to take a look, if there's any additional comments. If not, the only one that I actually had also was the there was something that I thought was trying to address Councilwoman Dottori's comment about that it would affect the homeowner or not, and it wouldn't be, it wouldn't affect the actual contractor, but here it affects them both in the language. So
Yeah, no, that was
I thought that was
But it
the
should affect
that was
understanding.
that
Right.
was that
Oh,
was
both.
what we.
oh
yeah,
both.
that's
Oh,
what-
so I thought
that
you
was
wanted
Steve-
to take that out.
No, that was Steve's suggestion.
Okay.
Right, this one.
Okay. Go ahead.
The only thing I noticed is instead with the leaf blower being operated at half speed, wouldn't that using the electric leaf blower it would be just as effective since they only go about half speed with the battery pack, or we're gonna
So
let them
this
use?
is only defining leaf blower as gas powered. In other words, gas powered
If
leaf
you were
blowers are
using
the only ones
electric,
that
it
are
wouldn't apply.
Right. So then I'm exactly so.
So are
The
you
provision
saying-
does not apply to. I'm not understanding. Oh, to cemetery property while using it half,
No, I
No.
mean, the way it's written now, it's cemetery properties or,
or on any pavement impervious surfaces at half speed. So
right. So you're saying if you're gonna, then why not just have people use electric leaf blowers in those situations?
which is about a half speed thing anyway.
I think it's also the length of the battery.
Yeah, for how long they can use it, and then if somebody doesn't have that, you know,
Right.
you're putting a burden of having to buy a piece of equipment that they may not have. So it's an additional cost burden potentially to the.
But again,
Okay.
this doesn't limit the use of electric leaf blowers.
No,
well,
no,
no.
but what
Right.
what Liz is saying is that you get rid of all, like, if you. I
You can
understand
use
what Liz is
electric on the
saying,
sidewalk
but it
instead
might
of using
it might
gas
be-
at all.
If
I
the
see.
battery pack doesn't last long enough to do whatever you're doing on your impervious surface, then
I see
I
the
see.
argument both ways, but
Yeah.
you know, like opening that little door. I feel like a flood's coming. So
I'm good with the changes.
all
Anybody
right,
else?
if you're good,
I mean,
I just think
Yeah.
that's you know.
Okay.
Oh, it was half speed. I swear. I get it.
I think there's so much room for that on, you know, that part of this has to be,
It's okay.
you know, we have to recognize that it's a very, very small, tiny step in a bigger direction that hopefully will influence the industry overall.
Exactly.
But
I agree.
it's
Right.
not,
Wholeheartedly.
it's not going to be an easy to enforce, you know.
Right. And it's an opportunity also for us to take the time to educate people about the different techniques.
It's more of a
that are
conversation
available.
starter than a.
Correct.
It's going to increase awareness of what the risks are and what the harm is, and the fact that, you know, if you have a few leaves on your lawn, it's not necessarily a bad thing, which could open the door to whether or not you want solar panels on your front lawn, but we won't go there.
And also, of course, you know, the conversation about mulch mowing and you know what that can do and the benefits in it. And if we are able to get this leaf blower legislation passed, because we have our highway superintendent in the audience this evening, I would like to also suggest that we include information about this local law in the mailing that goes out to unincorporated residents about refuse and recycling, because I know that there's a lot of other stormwater management information in there, and I think it would be helpful to make sure that they know that. And I'm just going to add quickly, because I didn't mention this in my announcements before today, I attended a forum for those participating through the Sustainable Westchester process, and about the Recollect software, which is basically an app and a link on a website that can help people get personalized information about what their refuse and recycling schedule is and updates. So we're going to be providing a lot of information to Sustainable Westchester, who then provides it to Recollect. And what we're moving in the direction of trying to get rid of those wonderful printed refuse and recycling schedules that everybody has come to rely on. But guess what? You don't have to remember where you stuck it in your house or
Thank
where
you.
I post it right in the garage.
And I know I took down my village one and I lost it. I can't find it. So, but it's great to have these things on our phones or on our computers so that we can make sure that we know, and you will be able to get push outs of information. For example, if there was some delay or something like that based on your address, and hopefully you'll also be able to get other information like about tire recycling days and things of that nature. That will be again specific to our town, but also you'll see if there's county information and things of that nature. So it's kind of exciting. We're hoping that by 2020 we could move away from having the printouts, and you can just print it out yourself, your own refuse and recycling schedule from the website, which you will still be able to do in 2019. And we're hoping that that's going to be up and running in the first few months of 2019. So with that, I am going to just thank everybody for joining us this evening. I want to wish everyone a most happy Thanksgiving filled with family, friends, loved ones, and of course, lots of delicious food. If you have an opportunity to help someone out over the next few days or say thank you to those who are there for you all the time, please do take the opportunity to do so. I would like to thank the town board for all of your hard work and oversight of the town government, as well as the many hardworking people on the town staff, as well as our attorney and those who serve the town through our many intermunicipal agreements, as well our first responders, our volunteer boards and committees, and everyone else we work with so closely. And thanks to Tom in the back from GoTV also. While so much of the work goes unnoticed by the majority of those you serve, I very much appreciate all that you do for our constituents every day. So thank you. I look forward to seeing everyone next Tuesday, November 27th at the courthouse for our legislative session and public hearing on the 2019 budget, as well as the 2 local laws. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss personnel, contracts, and advice of counsel in relation to recent repaving of Hawks Avenue and any other issues.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Have a great night and a wonderful holiday weekend.